This guide's going to take you through how to do insane boomy damage just like this. So stay tuned, whether you're a beginner or an expert. This guide's going to have everything you need to play Boomkin and Dragonflight. What's up, YouTube fam, never Torpid fam? It's Torpid here. Today I'm taking you through the Boomkin. Many people are asking, is Boomkin viable? How is Boomkin viable compared to last season? How is it this season? So I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know from the beginning of Boomkin, the most basic rotation, and then I'm going to take it up to an advanced level and a high tier perspective level of the place and the fit that Boomkin's going to have in RBGs and Arena. If you haven't already, please check out my other videos. We have a Feral video out, in-depth Feral video, a Mistweaver video, and all of my PvP add-ons and weak ores in our other videos. We're just getting us started on YouTube. I've had incredible support, and I'm really thankful for that. So we're going to make sure that this is the best Boomkin video on YouTube for you guys. Let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is walk through the beginner guide for Boomkin. Anybody just picking the class up who wants to understand what everything does, this could be a great refresher for anyone coming back to the game. It's going to be perfect for anybody who's new. And even if you play Boomkin, I suggest giving this a quick listen to, just in case you haven't had anything clarified like this. Now, my goal that I pride myself upon is ensuring that you guys understand how everything works. So I'm not going to tell you things on Blizzard's terms. We're taking it into the Torpid's hands, and I'm going to walk you through my own version of how to translate everything in simple terms so that you're not as overwhelmed. And then once you put it into play, you're going to have a great understanding. So the first thing you need to know about Boomkin is it's a spellcaster from range that does a lot of AoE damage. The main thing about Boomkin form, as you can see Torpina down here, is that you are in your Moonkin form. So right here at the top right, you're going to see we have Moonkin form. Moonkin form is extremely strong. You can no longer be polymorphed by the mages. It increases your armor and it increases your damage. So there's really no scenario in the entire game where you're not in Moonkin form when you're trying to do damage. Once you've got that down, I'm going to walk you through the basics of these spells right here. There's 6 spells that are the basics of Druid. And once you understand these 6, the rest of the video I'll show you the other spells that are going to amplify these 6. But first, let's walk through the passive ability for Boomkins. Now, Boomkins have an Eclipse. And this was a little confusing to me at first. So again, I'm going to give you my terminology for it. Basically, what's going to happen is you can get into a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse. Both of those eclipses are going to increase the respective damage paired with the eclipses. So, in short, you just want to be getting into eclipses. And in short, it's extremely easy and you're always going to be in an eclipse. So, over here, the abilities I'm going to show you are Wrath and Starfire. And Blizzard has added the number 2 beside them because when I press 2 Starfires, I'm going to enter a lunar eclipse. When I press 2 Wraths, I'm going to enter a solar eclipse. And again, to make it simple, when you're in those eclipses, they have increased damage. And you won't even have to keep this top of mind. You just know you're going to be doing more damage. And just know getting into those eclipses is as easy as casting these abilities. So, first things first. Whenever you start on Boomkin, you're going to apply your 2 damage over time abilities. Moonfire and Sunfire. Both of these abilities are going to be a damage over time effect that generates astral power for you. Now, astral power at the top left here, you can see I have 50 of it, is going to be your spending. So you're going to spend astral power on your abilities, and then you're going to generate astral power. So Moonfire and Sunfire are going to be spells on top of Starfire and Wrath that generate the astral power. And then once you have the astral power generated, I'm going to walk you through Starfall and Star Surge and a couple other abilities later on to spend the astral power. So basically what it's going to look like is you're going to press Moonfire. You can see through one of the talents I'll walk you through in a bit. Moonfire applies to 2 targets and is generating me that astral power at the top left of the screen, taking me from 50 to 59. So I'm going to press Moonfire, and Sunfire. And you can see again, Sunfire has been applied to all the targets in 8 yards, which we're going to walk through with the talents. So basically what's going to happen is you're going to be looking to keep Moonfire and Sunfire up on your targets always. Now, Moonfire can only go to 2, but Sunfire can go to 8. So you're going to be looking to Sunfire when people are grouping up and pressing Moonfire a couple more times than Sunfire, as it only goes to 2 instead of 8. Once you have them dotted up, what's going to happen is you have an option between two things. You can use Star Surge, which is an instant surge to do damage to your opponents, or you can press Starfall, which is going to create a large AoE around you that is bringing down these shooting stars that are just always doing damage. So it's another damage over time effect, but instead of being on them and potentially dispelled, Starfall is going to go around this entire area of the PvP area, and it's going to be damaging everybody. Starfall is extremely strong and is going to be a primary thing we talk about during this video. So let me just walk you through it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and Sunfire, Moonfire, and then I'm going to cast 2 Wraths. And now I'm going to be in a Lunar Eclipse, which is going to be paired with Starfall. I'm going to press Starfall, and you can see it. Boomkin is so cool, man. All the stars are coming down, and if you look very closely, you can see just on the outer edge of this training dummy right here, I'm going to press Starfall again, how I have the line. So Starfall's going all the way out here, all the way around the entire room. You can see it ends out here. So Starfall, extremely large range, 45 yards of big AoE damage. So once more, I'm going to dot them up, and then I'm going to cast 2 Wraths to generate Astral Power. And as soon as I get enough Astral Power for Starfall, which I don't have, so I'm going to cast another Wrath, you're going to press Starfall. Now, Star Surge is a good way to try to finish somebody off and spend your Astral Power instantly, but it's been nerfed pretty hard, and we're going to talk about it. Okay, to finish off the beginning side, what I want to do is just take you through the other forms that Druid has for anyone who might just be picking up Druid for the first time. Quite simply, when you're not in Moonkin form, you only need to be in your human form to pair human form with one other talent. Everything you can do in human form, you can do in Boomkin form except for this one talent. We're going to be running Wild Charge here on the talent tree. You can just see it above my webcam. And Wild Charge allows you to do different things depending on the form you're in. So when you're in human form and you press Wild Charge, you will fly to an ally's position. I'm going to talk about Wild Charge for everything, but next up is cat form. So your 2 primary reasons for going cat form is to go invisible with Prowl, and is to dash with dash to move fast. That's the only time you're really going to be in cat form, and really all you need to know. When you're in cat form, your Wild Charge will leap behind the target. So in human form, it flies to the ally. Now we're going to jump behind them when we go cat form with Wild Charge. The next form is bear form. Your 2 primary reasons for going bear form are to be defensive. So when you go bear form, you're going to get your armor increased by 220%, stamina increased, and still immune to polymorphs. And typically when you shift into bear form, you're going to press your Frenzied Regeneration. This is Boomkin's most consistent heal, because not only does this heal you for 32% of your health, but while you're being healed by this, you're also in bear form. Please keep in mind, if you press Frenzied Regen and leave bear form, it will stop the regen. And then Bark Skin is extremely important for bear form, because usually I'll pair Bark Skin with Boomkin form, or with bear form. But also remember that bear form doesn't need to press Bark Skin because it's tanky on its own. When you're in bear form, your Wild Charge becomes a charge and roots the target. Okay, guys, so I'm going to hit the PvP training dummy, because if you didn't know this, hitting the PvP training dummy simulates your eye level gear of 411. So I'm going to go ahead and get in combat with the PvP training dummy, which is going to bring my stats up to what they are in the actual arenas and battlegrounds. So you can see our number 1 stat is going to be versatility for the flat damage and damage reduction. Our second stat that I'm going for is actually a mix of mastery and haste. Now, the mastery on Boomkin is, well, your Sunfire and Moonkin are on them. Your nature and arcane spells are going to do 23% more damage. And I just mentioned in the beginner guide, and I'm going to mention throughout the video, that maintaining Sunfire and Moonfire, even when those pesky healers are dispelling them, is top priority, as it's going to enable our mastery. But the other thing that we're going to talk about is this build is built around a lot of dot damage and a lot of AoE, so we need to make sure we have a good amount of haste. I haven't maximized it, but what I did was I mixed my gear with haste and mastery, and of course versatility. I'm not sure if I want to do haste enchants, verse enchants, or mastery enchants, but once the season starts on Tuesday, I'm going to figure that out for you and give you an update. But I can confidently say having a good amount of verse, a mix of mastery and haste, is going to be your best bet. Okay guys, first things first, go ahead and make sure you import these talents before we get started. The import string will be in the top comment down below. Alright, buckle up. I've covered up the balance point tree so that you guys are dialed in with me. We're going to go through every single druid point availability, and I'm going to tell you guys the different situations and where I think each thing is strong. And it's important to note that this tree can be messed with a ton, which is really exciting, but makes it a little more difficult for me to give you the information in a shorter time. So let's get into it. First things first, I'm going to completely ignore the Rake, Rip, Maim, Feral Swiftness, and Tireless Pursuit for the sake of this guide. For anybody who knows how to play Druids, you know how to put these in effect, but I don't really think they're going to be important and rarely used in the majority of scenarios, so skipping them. Starting from the top, Frenzied Regeneration is mandatory. It's going to give you your 32% heal. Then we're going to pair it with Frenzied Regen, and Barkskin increases all the healing received. It's also extremely mandatory that you take Moonkin Aura. We discussed this earlier, but Moonkin Aura is your main form for Boomkin. If you're not Moonkin form, you're doing it wrong. Next up, we're going to talk about Hibernate. Now, Hibernate was really strong in Shadowlands because Boomkin was looking to take a lot of bases, and it was getting into skirms with other druids, and you could catch somebody in a Hibernate, which is an extremely long CC, and take their base. And it was also pretty strong in Arena because there was an ability called Soul Shape that the majority of classes took, and a lot of people didn't know that when they Soul Shaped, aka turned into a beast, you could Hibernate them. In Dragonflight, I don't see a lot of value in Hibernate. In RBGs, we're going to talk about this, the Boomkin class isn't going to be dueling as many druids, and with the talent points being so strict on how many points you get, I really don't see a lot of situations for Hibernate, so I'm not going to recommend it, but you'll discover when you do need it. What I'm going to do is head down to Cyclone. Cyclone is Boomkin's best CC. In fact, it's the best CC in the game because during the Cyclone, they are completely invulnerable to everything and invulnerable to doing damage to us. They can't move and they're stuck in it. The only counter to Cyclone is a priest mass dispelling it off of them. Otherwise, they're locked up in there, and we can cast it an infinite amount of times, which we're going to get to. Heading back just to the left a little bit, the reason I have Thrash, Swipe, and Iron Fur is because what I wanted to show you guys is you can get down to choose between Incap, Roar, and Bash. So you'll see that I took Thrash and Swipe, but these are rarely going to be used. Sometimes you'll try to thrash a rogue out of stealth, but that's about it. Iron Fur, you're going to press in bear form when you're under a lot of pressure and stuck in bear form for a long time. But ideally, we're not going to be in that situation. And then we take flat damage, improve our Barkskin that has an absorb shield, and then we're going to take either Incap Roar or Mighty Bash. Bash being a strong stun for Boomkin on healers that you can put them into a clone. Incap Roar being that patented AoE CC to disrupt something like a Rogue Mage Priest opening up on you. That Rogue opens, you Incap all three, disrupt their opener. And then I took one stack of Well-Owned Instincts. Now, it's not too typical that the fights last long enough for this to be worth 2 points in the 90 seconds, in my opinion. But I do think that I could take one out of Nature's Vigil and sub another one into Well-Owned Instincts if that becomes the case in Arena. And then you need Wild Charge. It's Druid's biggest toolkit to move around and set up plays and really differentiate yourself from other Druids. Soothe, it forces us to take, I'm not even sure if you can dispel Hunter and Rage anymore, but you have to take it in order to get your Stampeding Roar, in order to get your Lycera's Teachings, and to get Renewal. And I think Renewal is extremely strong this season because it gives you 30% of your health, and that's useful all the time. Heading back over here, we're going to take Sunfire and Improve Sunfire. Both of these mandatory. Sunfire being your other astral generator, and Improve Sunfire making sure that one global of Sunfire can go on to 8 people. Without Improve Sunfire, we have to spend our globals dotting everybody up. Healers are going to be dispelling that. The whole class would fall apart. So these two completely mandatory. And then you're going to go with Mass Entanglement so you can pair that with your Beam. And in certain situations, Vortex. When would you take Vortex? Well, DH tanks might be the meta in RBGs, just as the first example that comes to my head. And DH tank is strong because it can leap away. In an RBG, in a flag carry map, I would run Ursul's Vortex. And because you can always cast a root. Do you see down here? I have Entangling Root. So if I want to root beam a healer, I can spend the 1.5 second cast time to root them and then silence them while having the value of Vortex to lock down the DH. When he jumps away, he's going to get pulled back in. In this talent tree, I've gone Innervate. I love healers. I'm promoting healers. I want them to be helped. And I'm going Nature's Vigil. Now, this entire build is going to be mostly around AoE damage, as we're going to get to. But Nature's Vigil, to me, really stands out because it lasts 30 seconds. So you are going to have some single target damage in the build. And little things add up. A lot of people overlook the smallest things. Like, Warlocks have a lot of leech. People overlook that. But then you look at the end of the game and the Warlock's leech really added up. I think the same is going to be true for Nature's Vigil. And the whole idea is I don't know where else to put this talent point to get more value. Again, maybe the Hibernate, maybe the second Well-Known Instincts, shorter duration on Stampeding Roar if you want, maybe one Ursine Vigor, so when you shift into Barfram you get that extra health. But I think that the biggest value from what I've tested is, even though this isn't the strongest ability, because it lasts 30 seconds, it becomes a 1-minute cooldown. So every minute, that little bit of damage and that little bit of healing really does add up. You can also take the route of Rejuvenation, Swiftman, and Corruption in a lot of situations down to Natural Recovery. You cannot go the left side at all. There's a lot of options, but this is what I believe to be the strongest build in the most amount of scenarios. But please remember, you can edit this, and I'm not telling you anything set in stone. I'm just setting you up to have the most success possible, and then I want you to mess around with it yourself. Almost forgot to mention Typhoon. Typhoon slaps. In RBGs, it can be used effectively to knock people off of higher ground, either off the edge or off an objective. And in Arena, Typhoon might as well read to me, knock enemy casters up to 3, CCing them for 1 second. What does that mean? If a priest is casting a flash shield and your root beam's on cooldown, Typhoon pushing them stops their heal. So it's an additional CC and super effective. I love Typhoon. It's just fun, guys, so make sure you take it. We're going to head into the balance points trees now. All right, the Boom King talent tree. Keep in mind, after I go through the talent tree, I'm going to show you the rotation, and then I'm going to give you a description on why everything I put together is the way it is and how Boomkin's going to be played in Arena and RBG. So stay with me here, guys. I really want to break down every single talent in this tree, give you guys that clear understanding whether you're new or just coming back as a Boom King main. It's very exciting. First things first, we're going to take our Eclipse. It's non-negotiable. We talked about at the beginning of the video. The second thing is Shooting Stars. So with the AoE build, we're going to be looking to generate Astral Power and do a lot of Rot and a lot of pad damage. Shooting Stars is going to allow us to do that. The second thing here is called Nature's Balance. And well in combat, we're passively generating Astral Power. And well in stealth, moving at the beginning of an arena or the beginning of a rated battleground or in between the battleground, it's going to help us get to 50 so that when we open for the first time, we start with 50 Astral Power. And I'll show you guys that. The next thing is Starfall, which we've talked about in the beginner's guides. It's the key to everything we're going to talk about. Solstice is going to increase the damage of our Shooting Stars, which is happening from our Starfall. We're not going to take Umbral Intensity. We're going to go ahead and take Umbral Embrace. So dealing astral damage has a chance to cause your next Wrath or Starfire cast during an eclipse to become astral and dealing 50% extra damage. We're not going to take Aetherial Kindling, which with casting Starfall would extend the duration of active Moonfires and Sunfires, because in PvP, the active Sunfires and Moonfires are being dispelled. This is more of a PvE talent. We're always going to be refreshing them, and we don't need to extend the duration because healers are always looking to dispel us. Now, this could maybe be good if you ran like double Warlock Boomkin or something, but for the most part, we're not going to use 2 talent points here. It's not worth it. We're going to go ahead and pick up Lunar Shrapnel. So Starfall's stars have a chance to deal an additional 25% damage to nearby enemies when they have Moonfire on them. And again, I've talked about it. I'm going to talk about it. The Moonfire uptime is extremely important. Force of Nature for RBG specifically is extremely strong when defending a base. And you're going to see that live on my stream as I play Boomkin. But I don't want to go too in depth with that here because it's a whole nother conversation. So for the sake of this build, we're not going to run it, but it is useful in certain scenarios. We're going to pick up our Solar Beam, which is Boomkin's kick. You can Root Beam a healer and they will be stuck in your silence, or you can kick it just like with any other kick and lock them out of their spellcasting school. We're not going to run Stellar Flare with this build so that we can put our talents somewhere more effectively. But again, I want you guys to fiddle around with this, and maybe you'll be able to find a way that Stellar Flare does fit into the build, because having an additional dot in some scenarios, I think could have a lot of value. We're going to pick up Orbit Breaker. So every 30th shooting star calls down a full moon at 80% power. So I'm going to show you that in a second. Twin Moons, I talked about this. It allows our Moonfire, instead of going to 1 target, to go to 2 targets. And the importance of that is when Moonfire hits 2 targets and then 2 targets, and you've been able to dot all 4 of them in 2 globals instead of 4 individual globals, it's really strong and it's key. We're going to take Stellar Innervation. So during our eclipses, Sunfire is going to generate additional power and Moonfire is going to generate additional power. And those Moonfires and Sunfires, we're going to keep 100% uptime. Now, this build over here used to be extremely strong when Star Surge's Boomkin's 30 Astral Power Spender used to hit like Goku's Kamehameha. But now they're hitting like Krillin's, which is not good because it's a waste of our Astral Power. So although these 2 spells look appealing, we're not going to be running them today. Down here, we're going to take Celestial Alignment, which is going to be paired with our Incarn. So a very strong 30-second window on Druid. And then we're going to take, when you have 3 periodic effects on a target, your damage and healing on them are increased by 8%. And we're going to take Star-Lord, which is Star Surge and Starfall grant you 4% haste. So again, not going to use the Star Surges too often, but the Starfalls granting us that extra haste is going to be absolutely key. I'm going to leave this side to last. So then we're going to go with your classic Soul of the Forest, which is it increases Ras Astral Power generation by 50, and your Starfire's area effect is bigger. So when they're grouping up in the arena or the RBGs, your Starfire is going to have a better chance of hitting multiple enemies. We're going to take Orbital Strike. Orbital Strike. I'm not retaking that. We're sticking with it. Figured it out. This is a brand new ability, and I'm going to show you guys right after in the rotation exactly why it's so strong and what it does. So pay attention. We're going to take Circle of Life and Death so that this whole AoE build, all of our dots are ticking 25% faster. We're going to take Alun's Guidance because it's going to reduce the cost of our Starfall by 8, which is crazy, and that's going to allow us to maintain perfect Starfall uptime. And then we're going to take Balance of All Things. So every time we enter an Eclipse, so 2 Wraths or 2 Starfires, we're going to get Critical Strike increased by 24%. So this is really going to add up and give us that extra crit every time we swap between an Eclipse. And then I'm going to go down this left side. It's extremely interesting and brand new. We're going to get a spell called Wild Mushroom, which in short, making it sound simple, paired with Fungal Growth, is going to spawn a mushroom on their location, do AoE damage, and slow. And it really starts to add up with our AoE build, and it's brand new, so I've been having a lot of fun with it. The other 2 things is we're going to take Fury of Elune and pair it with Sundered Firmament. I don't know how these words are, guys. You can't be throwing these words at me. We're going to take Fury of Elune, which again is going to help us spin nodes in RBGs, do damage in RBGs, as well as do damage in arenas while generating Astral Power. And this talent, every other Eclipse is going to create a Fury of Elune with less damage, but to help maintain our Astral Power. So this entire build is going to be about keeping enough Astral Power to always have all your dots up and your Starfires, and then make sure you're CCing. There is New Moon, which I'm going to go over for fun, that absolutely cranks. But again, for what I believe the meta Boom can build to be, and meta to Torpid means the strongest build in the most amount of scenarios with the least amount of tinkering. I believe that to be this, but I want you guys to tinker and I want you guys to try it out. Based on your comp and what you're facing, you will change things. So let's get into the rotation of both of these trees together. And then I'm going to walk you through a great explanation of how Boomkin's going to work in Arena and in RBGs headed into the competitive season on Tuesday. We're going to go into the rotation, but before we do, I'm going to walk you through 3 brand new abilities. The first one you might be thinking, hey, Torpid, we know what Incarn is. But with the talent I told you guys to take earlier that absolutely cranks in Arena and RBGs, Orbital Strike, can't get this word right if my life depended on it. What's going to happen is when you press your Incarn, you're going to get this cool green line, another fun interactive spell that does mega dam, and it applies a Stellar Flare to them. So watch when I release it, it's going to shoot a beam and apply Stellar Flare, which is going to proc with our other talents and start doing big dam. You can see that just this spell alone is cranking around 20k DPS, which is absurd. This second ability is Fury of Elune, which is going to call down a Fury of Elune on the target, generating astral power and doing damage. And the last one is our Mushroom, which is brand new. So after this Fury of Elune ends, I'm going to show you that you just click on somebody and pop your Wild Mushroom, and you can see it does AoE damage, and it gives them the little dot as well as the slow. Alright guys, so check out this 30-second opener, and then we'll talk about it after. Okay, so now I'm going to walk you through how everything that I've talked about so far in this video comes together. You just saw it, now let's see it in slow-mo with a little Torpid to spice a little bit of information on you. Let's get started here. The first thing I'm going to do is apply my Sunfire, because Sunfire will go on every single target. Then I'm going to pop my PvP badge for the extra primary stat, followed by 2 Moonfires. As there's 5 targets here, I want the Moonfires to spread between the targets. And remember, your Moonfire goes onto 2 targets. So I'm going to dot 4 out of 5, which is completely fine. Don't want to use that global here in the opener on the last target. Getting out the 4 out is plenty. The reason we're putting our Moonfire and Sunfire out first is because our PvP talents are now going to cause our damage to do more because our buffs are on them. So we're not actually going to Incarn until after that. Then what's going to happen is our guy's going to shoot out that orbital spell that I can't pronounce, apply the Stellar Flares, and we're going to go into our Incarn. Read out of Incarn, we're going to proc our most important ability, Starfall. Now I have this weak aura so that you can track it. Whenever this is about to fall off, you need to refresh it. If you do that at the bare minimum, you're going to do a lot of damage. The weak aura, of course, I love you guys, it'll be below. So after dotting them, popping Incarn to get our orbital out and putting all our dots on them and getting our first Starfall out, now we go into a pretty basic rotation. What I'm going to do is add in one of our mushrooms because they have 3 charges. So you're going to mix in a mushroom here. Mushrooms do a lot of damage, and put the dot on top of them. And then I'm going to cast my first Starfire. The reason for Starfire is because Starfire hits all the targets in this area where Wrath would just be hitting 1. So I'm going to Starfire in our AoE build. And then I'm going to Starfire again and get a 3rd one off. And then I'm going to, because my Sunfire was falling off, and because it's important we keep our dots on them for that extra damage, I'm going to refresh the Sunfire, and then right there, my Starfall was about to drop. So as soon as I press Sunfire, I go right into another Starfall to maintain that for max uptime. A new Mushroom, so our second charge of 3, back into our Starfire AoE ability. And then you're going to see, similar to the Sunfires, 2 Moonfires in a row to spread those back out to increase our damage. And then look, our Starfall's about to drop. So good chance Torpid is going to cast a Starfall here. Good news, he did. You'll also see that during this rotation, that there are little blue stars on the ground. I actually have one circling me. And I'm going to talk about the PvP talents after this. So then I'm just basically, guys, after the opener, which I explained, your rotation is maintaining Starfall, maintaining your Moonfire and Sunfire, and spreading out your mushrooms mixed in with Starfire. That is exactly it. Watch that back. Let me know in the comments below if that was articulated well, if that makes sense. Okay, guys, before I explain to you Druid's place in RBGs and arenas, let's go through the PvP talents. The first one is called Starburst, and it's not the candy. What's going to happen is during our Starfall, our most important spell that we're pressing all the time, there's going to be a chance for one of these to spawn. And you can see our first one spawned over here. Now, Starburst, you're going to pick them up. They're going to go on here for 15 seconds, and you're going to run them into the enemy to do damage and knock them up. But it's extremely important. 50k, it's extremely important that you notice that your teammates can pick these up, and the knock DR doesn't DR anybody else's knocks on your team or itself. So in a big team fight, these are going to be spawning everywhere. Important to communicate to your team to pick those up and run them into the enemy for the knock DR, and the other int users are going to be the ones that hit the hardest with us. So Starburst is completely mandatory for this build, and it's extremely fun to just run those things into people and knock them up, typhoon them off. You guys will figure out the utility that it is, but make sure you take Starburst. Alright, so quickly, the PvP talents. We just talked about Starburst. The other two that I'm going to recommend is pairing your Alkan Adept with your High Winds. High Winds, when you cycle on the target, whether they sit the full 6 seconds or instantly trinket it, they're going to come out and do 30% less damage and healing. This is extremely potent. I'll tell you about the abilities that I might swap these out for and their situations. Thorns is extremely strong into melee cleaves. It actually, when you check your damage meter at the end of the game, it does insane damage. The other thing that I might swap a talent for in some situations is Boomkin. If I'm running more of a spell cleave in arena or in RBGs, swapping out for Boomkin is really strong. The rest of these talents, there's some value in dying stars when your Stunfire and Moonfire get dispelled, but the value for these other talents just doesn't compete at all with these three. So go ahead and start with these three and then tinker on your own and enjoy, guys. Okay, guys, so let's talk about where Boomkin's place is in arena and RBGs. Firstly, I want to mention that I was going to get you Battleground footage, but it's just so awful in there with people wiping extremely fast, nobody really knowing how to position, the arena scrims being very similar, that footage is almost next to garbage. And I promise you that the footage in the YouTube videos after Tuesday will be live from actual arenas and live from actual RBGs, both at high CR top tier content. But I'm going to be able to give you a visual because I've been working on my explaining skills for years and years and years. And this is where Boomkin fits. Firstly, let's talk about RBGs. Boomkin is going to have shifted from last season's, last expansion's meta to a brand new one. Let me give you a little clarity for those that may not have played it before. Boomkin used to be an absolute brawler. It used to have insane instant surge damage, and it was able to open up and global somebody. It was able to take 2v2s and come out on top. Now they've nerfed Star Surge to the ground, and that kill potential, that 1v1 kill potential, even on flag carriers, guys, it's dissipated. It's hardly there. But what they've done, as you've seen throughout the entire video, is they've rounded Boomkin off with insane AoE pad damage. So now in RBGs, you're going to be primarily focused on the team fight versus attacking those nodes. Unless you're going with the rogue, there's one guy and you're just going to be the guy who clicks the flag. That's fine. But you're going to be looking to avoid 2v2s with Ferals and DHs and Shadow Priests because Boomkin, quite frankly, stands no chance. While you're team fighting, doing that awesome rotation that I showed you, the real strength of Boomy is its infinite CC. It's meaningful CC that can't be broken by your teammates' damage. So what I'm talking about, of course, is while you're doing your AoE abilities, you're going to be looking for kill windows. So you're going to be cycloning healers. You're going to be cycloning certain DPS depending on who your Warlock is dotting. Keep in mind, I'm not suggesting you cyclone everybody off of DR. You want to cyclone the proper healers, and you want to do it combined. So what you're going to do a lot of the time is you're going to root beam one healer. Okay, so root and then beam one healer. He's CC'd. Then you're going to go to the next healer and cast a cyclone. And they're going to be trying to get out of this, so they might have Trinket ready. But on top of that, we're going to be able to Incap Roar and CC multiple people and then Typhoon them. Now, in a rated Battleground, buying your team anywhere from 2 to 6 or more seconds of CC is what's going to allow your team to get the kill. And remember, while you're CCing them, your AoE damage is taking effect, and you are helping the team both on the CC side and the damage side. It's similar in Arena, but in RBGs it was important that I covered that you're no longer taking those 2v2s or even the 3v3s, because if their team has any other class other than a Boomkin to mirror you, you're most likely going to lose that. I believe the RBG meta is going to turn more skirmishy with Rogue Feral, Rogue DH, maybe an out-of-stealth Rogue Shadow Priest running out of base. But no longer will Boomkin be affected when you're trying to duel to win a node. For the ninjas in stealth where you click the flag, applicable. But other than that, no good. Boomkin will be this massive AoE damage threat with good CC and synergy with your team. And I believe the same thing for Arena. When you're walking into Arena, you're no longer cross-CCing and bursting one target. I believe Boomkin's going to be paired with a rock comp like a Warlock, where you're putting out max pressure and you're playing the mana game. You're looking to slow their damage with all your CC and rot them down and make them run out of mana. And when they start to run out of mana, between your damage and the Warlocks, you're going to win the game that way. So overall, I think that even though they nerfed our single target damage, they've buffed our AoE damage, making it extremely strong and brand new. I'm going to find out during the competitive season just how strong in actual games versus actual players. I hope this guide is extremely helpful. I wanted to cover Boomkin as if you picked it up, Boomkin as if you're pretty good at the game, and even the players that are great at the game. I'd love to hear from you on what you think the meta might be. But I think that Boomkin has a place, and I want to thank you guys for watching another Torpid video. Please let me know what you think. Let me know what else you want. Let me know if you've seen something in another guide and you want me to add that. Again, the import strings will be below, the weak ores will be below, and we'll be live every single day at twitch.tv/Torpid starting Tuesday for 8 hours, hosting RBGs with you guys included, hosting Arena with you guys included. So if you want to come play with me, follow the stream, and truly, I will invite you. I'll see you there. As always, if you want to keep it never Torpid, in-game and out, you got to want it for yourself and others. Thank you, guys.